Hello and welcome to this Thursday's edition of Divorce RX, your prescription for the divorce process. My name is Vicki Townsend. I'm the founder of TheCafeD, and I know that you are here today because we are here to help you through the process of divorce. And every Thursday we bring an amazing expert that will help you make this transition an easier, kinder, and gentler one. So thank you so much for being here today. And I just want you to know that if you're going through this process, you are not alone. We here at TheCafeD are here to support you. And one of the things that we want you to know about is that we have a very special and private Facebook group, and it's designed to help you have access to some of the most amazing experts, including our expert today. So you can join and get a part of the conversation with us if you'll just go to our website at www.thecafed.com and join our community and membership. There's actually a link on this website, on this webinar, so you can see that right away and hop onto it, because right after we're done today, we're going to be going over to our very private Facebook group to answer your questions that you may have of our very special guest today, who is also a dear friend. Her name is Lori Dubow. Today we are going to be talking about real estate, and today it's should I stay or should I go? And I know that was a very, very, very difficult decision for me. Figuring out whether you can afford to stay, whether you should stay, whether the memories in that place are so negative and so highly charged that you just need to let it all go. So today is should I stay or should I go? 10 tips for good real estate moves through the divorce process. And you are talking to somebody that had to sell. I didn't have to sell, but I did sell 2 homes after 2 divorces. And I know that it was unbelievably emotionally charged. The decision to stay, or for as long as I did, was made on emotions, not necessarily out of what was right financially. And I know that that's probably what a lot of people are going through today too. So today I want to tell you about our guest, Lori Dubow. Lori brings a unique perspective to this discussion on moving through the real estate transaction process and the divorce process. Along with her real estate and mortgage expertise, she has 20 years and a background in counseling with a master's degree in psychotherapy and a postmaster's in business administration, a licensed real estate broker, and a licensed mortgage broker. Lori was the founder and owner of Paradise Realty International, and in 2014 she merged with Signature Real Estate Companies, and she formed Signature Paradise Realty International. She is a trained CDPE. For those that don't know, that's a certified divorce property expert, as well as RIOs, which are real estate owned specialist. This training included an instruction on how to perform broker price opens, which you might hear that acronym BPO, or letter of opinion value, which she has utilized in her extensive experience testifying in court as an expert witness regarding the value of homes and circumstances surrounding the sale of homes. In 2014, Lori earned the prestigious designation of Certified Luxury Home Marketing specializing in making her the top 10% of sales in her region. She is a published author of more than 15 articles on a variety of current real estate and mortgage topics. Recently, Lori was asked to become the real estate editor for Attorney at Law magazine, specializing in working couples going through divorce. Lori is referred to as the real estate and mortgage expert, and she was speaker at a monthly workshop for 4 years entitled Second Saturday, What Women Need to Know About Divorce. Lori's perspective of the emotional, psychological, and financial factors to consider when deciding whether or not to stay in your home is the culmination of over 30 years of experience. She is uniquely qualified to help her customers understand and analyze their options and achieve their goals through the real estate and mortgage restructuring, and follow through with a plan that best suits their individual needs and circumstances. Known as the real estate concierge, Lori's mission is to coordinate each transaction in order to reduce the stress for her clients and make the process as easy as possible. And that is why my friend Lori Dubow is here today. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Vicki. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. I'm very, very excited about this topic. It's one that you and I have been talking about for a long time. And what I love about what you bring to this process, Lori, is that you were a psychotherapist for as long as you've been in the real estate industry. So who better to walk people through this emotional decision about selling your home than somebody that has the understanding of what people are going through emotionally when they make that decision. So thank you so much for being here today. And I know you have an amazing PowerPoint presentation that you've been working on to take us on those top 10 tips for good real estate moves through the divorce process. So I'm going to ask you, Lori, if you would, kind of take us away, show us exactly what we need to know, and take us through those 10 tips so that by the end of this, we want our listeners to understand how to make that great decision. So thank you so much for being here, and take it away.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So I will get us set up with this PowerPoint.
Yes, we all know that this comes with some technical challenges sometimes, so thank you for that.
Okay.
Here we are.
Okay, here we go. So that's you and that's me.
There we are.
Okay, so as Vicki said, we're going to talk about should I stay or should I go? 10 tips for good real estate moves through the divorce process, and we're going to really drill down and look at some of the issues that are so important when making that really, really important decision. So I'm definitely not your typical realtor, as Vicki said. My dad was a real estate attorney, so I grew up hearing stories about real estate at the dinner table. And it was very commonplace for my dad to come home and talk about different things that were going on in the real estate market and different challenges that he was having. But I decided to follow a different path, and I decided to pursue psychology for more than 20 years. And as Vicki explained, that was something that I did for quite a while. It was right around the time that I was going through my divorce that I made the decision to transition into real estate. And that's another long story for another day, maybe over a glass of wine or a martini for sure. For me, real estate really became the perfect marriage of all of my skills, all of my previous life skills and my work experience. And ultimately, when I created Paradise Realty, it was because I really wanted all of our clients to experience personal and comprehensive service and to really go through this process with as much knowledge and understanding as possible. And it really was a very unique perspective that allowed me to bring all of my skills together. And what I developed was what I consider to be a true real estate concierge. And it's a little bit different than the way most people approach real estate, because we really look at goals and we really look at what is best for the client. So I'm very proud of the work that we do. And you may wonder why I decided to specialize in working with people going through divorce. Many years ago, I was asked to observe a workshop that was being offered by a woman, and it was for women contemplating or going through divorce. And while I was there, just as an observer, this was after my divorce, I sat in the back and kind of a light bulb went off in my head, and I realized that every single person going through the divorce process needs to make very important decisions about their home. You're taking two people and they live in one home, and under the best of circumstances, they're going to be splitting up into two new homes. So very important decisions need to be made regarding the housing. And I realized that it's very complex, and that's how I got involved in working with people going through divorce, because the woman who ran that workshop asked me to be a permanent guest speaker at that workshop for 4 years. So every month I was there working with women going through divorce and helping them to really analyze what their best options were and what options they had regarding their home. So as we know, divorce is not always a happy process. Sometimes it's more contentious than other times, and very often the home is at the very center of the fighting and the challenges. So we're going to talk now about 10 tips for good real estate moves through the divorce process. I realized a very long time ago that there's a very strong emotional and psychological component to every real estate transaction. And it's so important for that to be balanced with the financial and procedural components. And in making decisions about what you're going to do as you're moving through the divorce process, there's very little that's more emotionally charged than the decision about what to do with the home. So I would like for you to just take one moment and close your eyes and think about the place that you call home. And now open your eyes and think about whether that place is the place that you're currently living or someplace else. And it's no coincidence that one of the most famous lines from any movie is Dorothy when she clicked her little red heels and said those words, "There's no place like home. There's no place like home." And that is just so true. Whether you live in a big home, a small home, traditional, modern, rented, or owned, we begin and end each day in our home. And it's truly a reflection of who we are. Even Dorothy finally understood that it's where our deepest emotional connections occur, both positive and negative. And especially when you're going through the divorce process, sometimes there are very strong positive emotional connections to the home and sometimes very strong negative emotional connections to the home. So it's really important to take all of that into consideration. And when we say home is where the heart is, it's really true. It's the place where many of our most precious memories are. And when our home is in jeopardy, we feel like our heart is being ripped right out of our chest, and our world is literally being turned upside down. So whether you decide to remain in your home or let it go, it's very important to understand the emotional ramifications of the decision and get lots of support for you and sometimes for your children or for an elderly parent. Psychologically, it becomes important to determine what will give you the most peace of mind and how it will affect the children, how it may affect an elderly parent who's leaving their home of 30 years and never going back. And I've found that when I'm working with clients, it's so important to help them explore their housing options and to take into account the 3 separate factors that we talked about. I know at the time I was going through my divorce, I made the decision to keep my home against the advice of my parents and some other well-meaning friends. Looking back, as Vicki talked about when we first began, I clearly made that decision based upon emotional and psychological factors and definitely not sound financial advice. So I encourage people to really explore all 3 of those options so that you can balance them out and make really good decisions. Very often as we move through the divorce process, we feel like we've been literally punched in the face. And some people even equate the feeling that they're having as if they're falling off of a cliff. And in fact, very often when I work with people going through divorce, it's kind of like they're a deer in the headlights. So this may be funny and, you know, it may be portrayed as a joke, but it's really not. You know, people that are going through the divorce process are very often like a deer in the headlights. They have a lot of trouble seeing the forest for the trees, seeing the big picture and really grasping what their options are. So it's so important to give them good support so that they can make an informed decision. So the first thing that we talked about was balancing the emotional, psychological, and financial issues. The second thing that we're going to talk about is how we determine how much the house is worth. We need to learn the difference between the appraised value and the market value because they're not always the same. So what I mean by that is that very often the appraised value is only based upon what has sold in the area, and it doesn't take into account the marketability of a house. So, like in our area, we have homes in country clubs. Those may be much harder to sell than a home that's not in a country club. So even though a home may appraise, let's say, at $500,000, we may not be able to sell it for $500,000. So if one of the spouses is planning on keeping the home because they think that they'll be able to sell it for $500,000 and walk away with cash, they might find out that they can only sell it for $350,000 or $400,000, and they may end up not being able to accomplish what they need to. So it's very, very important to understand that there's a difference between the appraised value, which is usually done by a certified appraiser, and the market value or the marketability of the home. So it's very important to speak to a real estate professional or some type of professional who can really talk to you about the marketability of the home, because that's a critical factor in making this decision.
Is that, Lori, that's interesting that you said that, because when I just recently sold my house, literally a week and a half ago, I got above market, appraised value on my house. And so in order to do that, or to kind of figure out where you need to price your home, your appraised value isn't necessarily what you need to go by, because somebody like you, as a professional that sells property, preferably somebody that's very knowledgeable of your area, would be a good choice, right?
Correct. Because, and in fact, I encourage strongly that you consult with someone who really can talk to you about the marketability of your home, not just after the divorce is over when you're trying to sell it, but when you're in the negotiation process, because that may be a critical factor in whether you decide to keep the home or not.
And quick question for you, Lori. Is it, if somebody does not have a real estate connection, they're in California, they're in Illinois, they're somewhere, can they reach out to you through our Facebook, and you can maybe connect them with a realtor?
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the third thing to consider is searching all of the liens against your current home. So it's important not to forget about first and second mortgages, back homeowners association dues, real estate taxes, mechanics liens from people that may have done work on the house, and to research any possible open permits that could affect your ability to sell. This will also affect the home as a potential asset or liability if it is being included in a settlement. So those are really important things to consider. Once you've determined the value of the house, the next decision is, can you afford the house? So understanding your housing expenses and your cash flow, this will comprise numbers 4, 5, and 6 of our list. So you've already considered the emotional and psychological aspects of it. You've made the decision whether you want to keep your home or whether you want to sell your home. The next question to consider is, can you keep your home or can you sell your home? Because it may not always be in alignment with what you would like to do. So you want to make realistic decisions. So the first thing to consider, number 4, is all of your housing expenses. So you want to look at what your carrying costs are. And those are typical housing expenses that most realtors and mortgage brokers are going to look at, such as your mortgage, real estate taxes, insurance, and HOA dues. But there are so many other monthly housing expenses and carrying costs that also need to be considered, like your electric bill, your water bill, if you have a pool, lawn care, cable, telephone. A mortgage broker and a realtor are not necessarily going to take those into account when they're looking at whether you can afford a home. So it's really important that you kind of delve deep into that and look at all the other expenses that are involved with owning a home. It's also very important to understand exactly what your homeowners association might cover if you have one. Sometimes the fee covers large expenses like insurance, cable, water, reserves for repairs, and sometimes it merely covers common areas and less significant items. So when you're looking at your budget, it's so important to include all of that information. Number 5 is when it comes to your monthly expenses, please, it's so important to look at the big picture. It's not just your housing expenses, but lenders will evaluate other types of revolving debt. So by revolving debt, we're talking about our car, we're talking about credit card expenses, which sometimes rise during a divorce because people start putting things on credit cards because they don't want to use up the cash. School loans are also other types of revolving debt. But a mortgage broker is only going to take into account what's on your credit report. It's so important for you to look at other things in the big picture. For instance, what about your children? Expenses that involve your children, saving money to send your children to college, or do you have an elderly parent or an ill spouse that needed to be taken care of? What about other monthly expenses, such as saving money for a car, clothing, a vacation, and other types of luxuries? It's very important to look at your whole lifestyle and to decide how much a piece of that you want to put into your housing and how much you want to save or you need to save for other types of things, life insurance, disability insurance, things like that, that can be so critical to your future. Number 6, the next thing is to make sure that you have enough money set aside for reserves, for repairs, and emergencies. It's so important to make sure that you've taken that into consideration. And I can tell you that when I got divorced, I took on all of the housing expenses, and I really wasn't considering all of the different things that can happen. Literally, a few months after I got divorced, my house needed a brand new roof, and that cost me $25,000. I had no idea that I was going to need to come up with that kind of an expense. And then about a year later, my son's toilet burst, and it flooded my entire home. And even though I had insurance, there was still a large deductible. So those were fees and expenses that I just never really thought about. So I urge people to really take a look at, if you're going to stay a homeowner, look at your reserves and make sure that you have enough money set aside for important things and emergencies that might come up. So the next decision that you need to make is, how much money are you going to sink into your home? And how much debt are you willing to incur in order to own a home? Those are very important decisions to make. Number 7, the next thing that's really important to really drill down and take a look at is, are you able to qualify for a mortgage? The mortgage industry, as most of us know, has changed over the last 5 to 10 years, and it continues to change on a daily basis. I'm a licensed mortgage broker, and even I get hit with surprises from time to time and changes in the mortgage industry that just come up. So it's really important, if you're getting pre-qualified for a mortgage, that your mortgage broker looks at all of your documents. They need to look at your credit report, your tax returns, your bank statements. They even need to look at your divorce decree. And you may ask, why would a mortgage broker need to look at my divorce decree? They need to look at how long your alimony and child support is going to last. It needs to continue for a certain number of years in order for you to be able to use it to qualify for a mortgage. And there is nothing more disheartening than finding a home that you love and thinking that you're going to be able to afford it, and then finding out at the last minute that you're not going to be able to qualify for the mortgage. So I really encourage people to try to really do a thorough pre-qualification before you start looking and before you make decisions and before you finalize your divorce, because it may be a critical factor in what you need to ask for and how you need to negotiate through the divorce process. Correct, Vicki?
Oh, absolutely, 100% with that. You know, this whole process was such an eye-opener, and I'm so grateful that I guess what I really want to say is that sometimes I learned what we're talking about today the hard way. So yes, learning it after the fact is not the best way to do it. So yes, you're absolutely right. I'm just grateful that we have this information for everybody to know now, because I'm not sure what my answer would have been a year ago.
I hear you on that, and I think that's one of the reasons that you and I are so passionate about working with people going through divorce, because we did not necessarily have the resources and the expertise when, I know I didn't, when I went through my divorce. And when I sat in that second Saturday workshop, you know, 5 years after my divorce was over, and listened to all of the expertise that was out there, I couldn't believe all the support that was available, and it became a passion of mine to provide that support to other people. And I know that that's your situation.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I feel sometimes like a broken record, which is, you know, do as I say now, not as I did then. Does that make sense?
It so makes sense that
right?
It's painful to hear.
When you asked, I really had to think about what my mindset was before I had met you, and before I had, you know, made the mistakes that I made. So now my answer is different than it would have been, and it's all because, you know, now I learned the hard way, and so the goal for both of us is to have people that don't have to learn the hard way.
Exactly, exactly. So as you're moving through this process, you know, you've determined psychologically and emotionally whether you want to live in the home. Hopefully you figured out how much your home is worth, and, you know, hopefully you figured out whether you can afford to stay in your home or to move. Now it becomes really important to keep intact as much as possible your peace of mind and your financial security. And that leads me to number 8. One of the very important things as you're going through the divorce, as much as possible, is to try to understand the importance of preserving your credit, your FICO score. And I'll never forget the moment early in my career when my client uttered the words to me, "I didn't think that buying a car 2 days before closing on my house would affect my credit score or my ability to get a loan." Because it was April 1st, I thought they were playing a joke on me.
Well, that's the kind of thing, Lori, that unless somebody tells you, this is like water off a duck's back for you now, but it clearly wasn't for her, and I'm not sure I would have known that either until you just said that.
Exactly. You know, so unfortunately, they weren't kidding, and the trouble that came about was entirely avoidable. It was then that I realized the importance of maintaining the best credit possible and understanding the factors that can impact a credit score. For instance, you may not know that closing a bank account can or closing a credit card can negatively affect your credit score. And, you know, there's a whole seminar on that. But my best advice is, before you do anything, closing credit accounts, opening credit accounts, buying cars, buying boats, buying airplanes, whatever it is, don't do anything major financially without consulting someone that can help you understand the ramifications of it, because it's, you know,
Lori, closing a credit card can impact whether or not you get a mortgage in a negative way?
Absolutely. And the reason for that is that one of the criteria that they use is a ratio between the amount of available credit and the amount of used credit. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you have $40,000 of available credit. and you've used $10,000. That would be a really good ratio. But if you close a credit card that's worth $20,000, now you've used a quarter, half of your credit, and now your credit score plummets. So, these are things I would not expect the average person to know, but this is all part of working with someone comprehensively and helping them to understand all of the things that can end up affecting them that they don't realize. Because again, most of us are like deer in the headlights when we come to this process, unless we're professionals, and obviously most people aren't. So
well, that's why. This is why I hope everybody is like listening and getting this. That this is why we're doing this.
yeah.
I would have never known that. So, and it makes perfect sense now hearing it, and I'm glad that I heard it now instead of when I want to get a mortgage and make that decision the wrong way, thinking I was doing myself a favor by getting rid of all that opportunity for debt, and that's not the case at all. My gosh, I would have never done that.
It's crazy. Sometimes it's very counterintuitive, but it's important to understand. So the last two things we want to talk about is, I think number 9 is probably one of the most important things, and that's have written prior agreements. And I cannot tell you how important that is when it comes to, especially when it comes to selling a house through the divorce process, because it is so easy for one of the partners to use the house as leverage in a negative way. So whenever I take a listing with a couple going through divorce, I get written prior agreements about what they're willing to accept as an offer on the house, and written prior agreements on how often and how much the house will get reduced if it doesn't sell, so that one spouse can't use that as leverage against the other to punish them for anything that's going on through the process. It's so important to do that, and it's something that you might not think about. If you are buying or selling a house, it's really important to have good contracts and good agreements in place so that there's no surprises at the end. But in particular, through the divorce process, I can't tell you, how many times I've seen one spouse use the house as leverage or as a punishment for things that are going on with the children or other types of monetary issues. So it's much easier to make those agreements beforehand when everybody has a clear head and the money's not on the table. That's my experience. The last thing is to make sure that you leave enough time to pack and to move stress-free. And Vicki, I know that you can talk about this right now because you just moved.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. Lori, first of all, I packed up a 5-bedroom, 3.5-bath house with a 2-car garage, and I moved into where you guys see me now, which is a 2-bedroom furnished apartment. And it was, and I launched a business at the same time, so it was really crazy timing, but it was one of those things. There's actually a book, and it's called The Art of Tidying Up, and it helped me make some good decisions about what to keep. And I only kept those things that brought me great joy. Everything else was either sold or given away. I looked at it, when I was letting go some fabulous furniture, or I was letting go of just kind of knickknacks that no longer served me or didn't go with what I wanted my new life to be. I was able to let it go and let it bless someone else in the process. But the one thing that I will tell you is that, and because I did it by myself, I took 6 weeks to pack up. And that was working probably at it 2 days a week easy, plus some evenings and things like that. So it took, and even still the week before I was closing, which was just last week, I still ran out of time, and I still was packing up stuff and packed stuff that I probably wouldn't have kept had I really probably managed my time better. So, you know, give yourself, you know, double the time that you think that it would take. You know, people were saying, oh, you know, just, you know, I want to just start the week or two before. I'm like, what? I had to go through each piece and make that decision of everything that was in my home, because I didn't want to carry it all with me. I didn't want the burden and the weight and the energy of a lot of the stuff that I had in my home to follow me. I used it as an opportunity, Lori, to let go of the past and to open myself up to a brighter and newer and different future. So it could have been, it was still a very emotional process for me, but it was also very cleansing. And that was something that I made for myself and chose it to be a healing and cleansing process as much as it was, you know, the getting rid of all the stuff I had been hoarding for, you know, 20 or 30 years. I had stuff that, I mean, it was crazy, some of the stuff that I had held on to for no reason, but other than I just didn't want to make the decision to let it go. So letting it go was very freeing.
Well, I hear you, and you know, there are very few things as stressful as moving, and you know, the very idea of packing up everything that you own, putting it in boxes, trusting somebody else to move it, getting it to the new place. Is anything going to get broken? Is it going to fit? Is the new place going to be okay? Am I going to like my neighbors? There are very few processes in our lives that are more stressful than moving. And people underestimate the amount of time it's going to take to pack up their things, and they underestimate the amount of stress that it's going to cause. And most people like you are running businesses, are working, have families, have other responsibilities. Very few people can take 3 months out of their life to pack up their stuff and move. So, you know, it's incredibly stressful. In fact, when my kids were younger and they still lived in the house, they used to say to me, Mommy, why are all your clients crazy? And I would say to them, they're not crazy. They're just going through a really crazy and stressful time. Because even the most sane, methodical person does get a little crazy when they're in the moving process. I see it all the time. You know,
I gotta be honest with you. I snapped somebody's head off, and I try and be, you know, I'm a pretty calm person. And at the last minute, another, you know, blip on the screen came up, and I have to be honest with you, I lost it. And I'm pretty zen most of the time. At least I try to be. I try to have a smile on my face. And I didn't. And I realize now that it was just all of the stress from everything else that was coming up. And so I apologized profusely and said, you know, I'm sorry, this is not like me. And they, you know, they understood, because if you've been through a move, you know.
Right. So in summary, one of the most important things about this entire process is making sure that you have a good team by your side every step of the way. And that's one of the things that's so awesome about what Vicky's doing through this TheCafeD and some of the other projects she's working on. She's putting people together so that people going through divorce have the resources of awesome attorneys, CPAs, and financial planners, mortgage brokers, realtors, inspectors, psychologists, counselors. So many people are needed to get you to the finish line when you're dealing with any of these processes. So, you know, life has changed so much over the last 10 or 15 years. There are so many amazing resources out there, and while we're going through the divorce, we're trying to recreate the security that we once felt when we were in our marriages very often. And, you know, it's a moving target. As we move through the process, it changes. Our needs change. Our situations change. And our financial and emotional lives continue to shift. And often this is a time, like Vicki was talking about, to explore a new life, to begin something new. And so often our housing is such a big part of that because it's where all of our, past memories were. So, it's just incredibly important to take your time, to not rush into it, to get with good professionals. And every single couple going through divorce is taking one home and dividing it into two, and often very difficult decisions need to be made. Two other quick points is, if you decide you're going to sell your house, you really need to take a look at how much your mortgage is and what you owe on the house, and decide whether you're going to be able to do a traditional sale or whether you're going to need to do what they call a short sale. A short sale is when you owe more on your house than the house is worth. About 5 years ago, that was very common because when the housing market tanked, people's home values went below the mortgage amount. I don't see it very often anymore, not nearly as often as I did in the past, because housing prices are going up. So houses are worth more than they were a few years ago, but it's still important to really understand whether your house is worth more than what you owe on it. And unfortunately, there are people that do end up having to get into a foreclosure situation. So if you need to do that, it's not the end of the world. You will survive. But if you can avoid the foreclosure, there are many ways to do that. So I urge you to seek out professionals and see if there are options where you can, avoid having to go through a foreclosure. Finally, if you take all of these things into account, our goal, Vicki, is to be able to come home and say home sweet home. Very often when you've gone through a divorce, your home was a place of turmoil. It was a place where there was a lot of arguing, where there was insecurity, where you couldn't feel safe. So when you're moving through the divorce process, for me, when I'm working with somebody, one of the biggest goals is to get them into a place where they feel safe, where they feel secure, where they can really come home and say, home sweet home.
Yes, and isn't that the truth? We want it to be a place where the energy is good, where the energy is pleasant, where it is something that makes you happy when you walk in. And so now here I am. We're on my balcony, and it's a different home than where I was just 10 days ago. But if I can tell you the energy here, the love that I have for my life, and that this is now new, and it's a fresh start, and it's clean. It comes with no baggage. And that's what doing it right can do for you. Having the property that is the right property for you. It may not be the home that you've lived in for the last 10 years. It may be something different, but it also may be something that can be so beautiful and so promising and such good energy and so helpful for you as a person so that you can grow and let go of all of that bad energy, that it can turn out to be the best thing ever. So Lori, thank you so much. That was awesome. So Lori, we're going to be talking at our very private Facebook group in just a few minutes. And I want to invite everybody to, if you have questions about your home, if you have questions about selling your property, join us now. Hop over to TheCafeD.com. That's TheCafeD, the letter D as in divorce.com, and join our community. It starts at just $7 a month. And you can, you can stop sharing your screen because I see me on there. Because I want to see your beautiful face, Lori. So I just want everybody to know that we have amazing resources for you. And Lori is one of them that can help you with your real estate needs, not only here, but wherever you are. If you have some questions, please feel free to join us on our Facebook page. Lori, we're going to head over there right now, and I will see you all over there. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for being a part of the TheCafeD. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we look forward to seeing you in our private Facebook group. Bye-bye for
Thank you
now.
for having me, Vicki.